The birthday cake had 40 candles on it, and every single one looked like a middle finger pointed straight at me. I stood in the corner of our living room, nursing my third bourbon, watching my wife Laura hold court like some suburban queen bee. Nothing like a birthday party to remind me I'm just another decorative husband in designer jeans and a forced smile. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Mark, honey, come meet Alex. Laura's voice cut through the chatter like fingernails on a chalkboard. She was practically glowing, her hand resting on the arm of some muscle-bound pretty boy in a tight polo shirt. He's my new personal trainer. Personal trainer. Right, because Laura needed help working out everything except her marriage vows. I forced a smile and walked over, extending my hand to Alex. He had one of those grips that screamed overcompensation, all-crushing pressure and direct eye contact. The kind of handshake that said, I could bench press your mortgage payment. Nice to meet you, Mark, Alex said, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. Laura's told me so much about you. I bet she has. I glanced at my wife, who was practically vibrating with nervous energy. All good things, I hope. Oh, you know Laura, Alex laughed, and something in his tone made my teeth clench. She's got quite the sense of humor. The party swirled around us like a tornado of suburban gossip and passive aggression. Laura's friends clustered in tight circles, their voices dropping to conspiratorial whispers whenever I walked by. Ellen, Laura's best friend since college, kept shooting me looks that could have curdled milk. Mark looks tired, I heard her say to another woman. Laura says he's been working late a lot. Real estate can be so demanding. Working late. That was rich, considering I'd been home every night for the past month while Laura had her mysterious girls' nights out and yoga classes that seemed to run until midnight. I retreated to the kitchen, ostensibly to refresh my drink, but really to escape the suffocating cloud of lies and cheap perfume. Sarah, Laura's other best friend, followed me in. Unlike Ellen, Sarah had always been decent to me, even when Laura's other friends treated me like furniture. You okay? She asked, her voice genuinely concerned. Just peachy, I muttered, pouring another bourbon. Nothing like watching your wife flirt with her personal trainer at her own birthday party. Sarah's face went pale. Mark, You what? I turned to face her fully. You knew. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and I had my answer. How long? I asked. 3 months, she whispered. Maybe 4. Mark, I wanted to tell you, but... But what? Girl code? Loyalty to the sisterhood? Because I care about you, she said, her voice breaking. Because this whole thing is destroying you, and Laura doesn't even see it. Before I could respond, Laura's voice rang out from the living room, bright and artificial as a neon sign. Everyone, gather around. I have an announcement. Sarah and I exchanged glances. Nothing good ever started with Laura demanding attention. We filed back into the living room, where Laura stood on the coffee table like she was accepting an Oscar. Alex stood beside her, his hand possessively on her hip. The gesture was so casual, so intimate, that it hit me like a physical blow. My friends, Laura began, her voice thick with wine and self-importance. Tonight isn't just about celebrating another year of my life. It's about celebrating new beginnings, new adventures, new rules. Ellen started clapping like a trained seal. Other guests joined in, caught up in Laura's theatrical moment. There are new rules awaiting my husband now, Laura announced, gesturing toward me with a flourish. New rules for all of us. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Alex smirked at me over Laura's head, his message crystal clear. I win, you lose. But here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. People forget you're capable of surprises. I started clapping too, slow and deliberate, The sound cut through the celebration like a blade. "You're absolutely right, Laura," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet room. "You meant to say your new husband, didn't you?" Laura's face went white. "Mark, what are you—" "I'm announcing our divorce," I said, still clapping, "to all these wonderful people who've been watching our marriage fall apart like it's their personal entertainment." The silence was deafening. Ellen's mouth hung open like a broken hinge. Alex's smirk evaporated faster than morning dew. "Mark, you're drunk?" Laura stammered. "You don't know what you're saying." "I'm saying I know about Alex," I replied calmly. "I know about the late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the yoga classes that don't exist. I know about all of it." I turned to Sarah, who was staring at me with something that might have been admiration. "Sarah, would you like to dance? I think the birthday girl needs a moment to process her new rules." The party dissolved into chaos after that. Half the guests fled like the house was on fire, while the other half lingered to watch the drama unfold. Laura tried to backpedal, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, but the damage was done. Her perfect birthday party had become her public humiliation. As Sarah and I swayed to music that no one was really hearing anymore, I caught sight of Laura's purse on the kitchen counter. Her phone was sticking out of it, screen still glowing. "Excuse me," I whispered to Sarah, and slipped away. Laura's phone was unlocked. She'd always been careless about security. A string of text messages filled the screen, all from Alex. My stomach turned as I read them, each message more explicit than the last. Screenshots took 30 seconds. Forwarding them to myself took another 10. "If you want to burn down your life," I muttered, slipping the phone back into her purse. "Bring gasoline to the party." I brought matches. The hangover hit me like a freight train made of regret and bourbon, but the satisfaction of watching Laura's world crumble was worth every throb behind my eyes. She'd left sometime during the night, probably to Alex's place, leaving me alone in our house with the debris of her destroyed birthday party. Empty wine glasses and crumpled napkins littered every surface. Someone had ground cake into the carpet. The whole place smelled like defeat and cheap perfume. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Coffee? We need to talk." 20 minutes later, I sat across from her at Grind Coffee, the little place downtown where nobody from Laura's social circle would ever be seen. Sarah looked like she'd slept about as well as I had, which is to say not at all. "You really did it," she said, stirring her latte with mechanical precision. "You actually pulled the pin on the grenade." "Had to happen sometime." I showed her the screenshots on my phone. "Want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes?" Sarah's face went through several emotions as she scrolled through Alex's messages. Disgust, anger, something that might have been relief. "She's been lying to me too," Sarah said finally. "All those girls' nights? I wasn't invited to half of them. She's been using me as an alibi while she played house with Captain Biceps." "So what do we do about it?" Sarah looked up from my phone, her eyes bright with something dangerous. "We make them pay." The next few days passed in a blur of reconnaissance and planning. Sarah, it turned out, had a vindictive streak that made my own look amateur by comparison. She'd been collecting Laura's lies for months, documenting every inconsistency, every suspicious story. "Laura told Ellen she was with me last Tuesday," Sarah explained, spreading printouts across my kitchen table. "But I was in Chicago for work. I've got the hotel receipts, the flight records, everything." And Tuesday was? The night Alex posted those gym selfies at 11 p.m., the ones where he's clearly in someone's bedroom, not at the gym. We were building a case, piece by piece, like prosecutors preparing for trial. The evidence was damning. Credit card receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, photos from weekend trips I'd never taken, a whole parallel life Laura had been living while I played the oblivious husband. The first confrontation came at Alex's gym, a chrome and glass monument to narcissism called Elite Fitness. I found him at the bench press, grunting through a set that was probably more about showing off than actual exercise. "Alex," I said, waiting for him to rack the weight. "Got a minute?" He sat up, sweat glistening on his artificially tanned skin. "Mark, right? Laura's husband. What's up, man?" "Just wanted to thank you," I said conversationally, "for the personal training. Laura's never been more flexible." His expression shifted, confusion giving way to wariness. "I'm not sure what you're getting at." "I'm getting at the fact that you've been screwing my wife for 4 months and now everyone knows it." I kept my voice pleasant, like we were discussing the weather. "I'm getting at the fact that your little affair just cost Laura her marriage and probably her reputation." Alex stood up, towering over me by a good 6 inches. The gym went quiet around us, other members sensing drama. "You need to back off, Mark," he said, his voice low and threatening. "You don't know what you're dealing with." "I know exactly what I'm dealing with," I replied. "A steroid-pumped pretty boy who thinks he can steal another man's wife without consequences. But here's the thing about consequences, Alex. They're like compound interest. They accumulate." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Alex, you might want to check your car." The shrimp I'd stuffed into his Porsche's air vents wouldn't cause permanent damage, but they'd make his precious ride smell like a dumpster behind Red Lobster for weeks. The sugar in his gas tank was a myth, wouldn't actually hurt the engine, but the psychological effect was priceless. I was halfway home when my phone rang. Alex's number. "You son of a bitch," he screamed. "What did you do to my car?" "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said innocently. "But if something happened to your car, maybe you should think about the kind of enemies you make when you sleep with married women." "This isn't over." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not." That evening, Laura finally came home. She looked like she'd been crying for hours, her makeup smeared and her hair disheveled. The confident queen bee from the birthday party was gone, replaced by someone who looked lost and desperate. "Mark, we need to talk," she said, hovering in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was welcome in her own house. "Do we?" I was sitting in my recliner, reading a book like nothing had happened. "I thought you'd made your position pretty clear at your birthday party." "I made a mistake," she said, moving closer. "A terrible mistake. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work things out." "Work what out, Laura? The 4 months you've been lying to my face? The credit card bills for dinners I never ate? The weekend trips to places I've never been?" She froze. "How did you know about those? Because I'm not as stupid as you thought I was." I closed my book and looked at her directly. "Because while you were playing house with your personal trainer, I was doing my homework." Laura tried a different approach, sitting on the arm of my chair and running her fingers through my hair. "Baby, please. I know I hurt you, but we can get past this. I love you." I stood up, forcing her to stumble backward. "Sorry, Laura. I'm all out of new rules." The look on her face was worth every moment of humiliation I'd endured. Confusion, anger, and something that might have been fear. "You can't just throw away 15 years of marriage," she said. "I'm not throwing it away," I replied. "You already did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess." That night, alone in the house that no longer felt like home, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You don't know the half of it. Meet me at the Red Lantern tonight if you want the truth." I stared at the message for a long time. The Red Lantern was a dive bar downtown, the kind of place where secrets went to die and truth came with a whiskey chaser. "Turns out the rabbit hole is lined with dirty secrets and secondhand lipstick," I muttered, grabbing my keys. I couldn't help but follow. The Red Lantern squatted on 5th Street like a neon-lit confession booth, all dim lighting and dark corners where people went to share their sins. I found my mysterious contact at the end of the bar, nursing a beer and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. She was maybe 25 with short black hair and the kind of nervous energy that suggested she had something important to say and wasn't sure she should say it. "You Mark?" she asked as I sat down. "Depends who's asking." "I'm Jenna, Alex's ex-girlfriend." She took a long pull from her beer. "Well, one of them." The bartender, a weathered man who looked like he'd heard every sob story in the book, slid a whiskey across the bar without being asked. I was apparently becoming predictable. "What do you want, Jenna?" "To warn you," she said, "about what Alex and your wife are planning." "Planning?" "They're not just having an affair, Mark. They're trying to destroy you." Jenna pulled out her phone, scrolling through screenshots. "Alex has been bragging about it for weeks. How they're going to get you fired, take your house, make you look crazy." She showed me the messages. Alex to someone named Brad. "Laura's got connections at Mark's real estate office. She's going to file a complaint, say he's been harassing clients, drinking on the job." Another message. "The plan is to make him look unstable. Laura's already talking to that cop friend of hers about getting a restraining order." "Detective Heller," I muttered. "You know him?" "Laura's mentioned him. Old college friend, apparently." I studied Jenna's face. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Alex is a piece of shit who ruins everything he touches," she said bitterly. "He did the same thing to my last boyfriend. Convinced me the guy was cheating, helped me wreck his life, then moved in to deliver the final blow. And you fell for it. We all fall for it. Alex is very good at what he does." Jenna finished her beer. But this time, he picked the wrong target. "Laura's been running her mouth about how easy it's going to be to take you for everything you're worth." I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not just betrayal, calculation. What exactly did she say? That you're weak. That you'll roll over and take whatever they give you because you're too nice to fight back. Jenna's smile was razor thin. "She doesn't know you very well, does she?" "No," I agreed. "She really doesn't." I bought Jenna another beer and got the full story. Alex wasn't just a personal trainer. He was a professional homewrecker. He targeted married women with money, seduced them, then helped them destroy their husbands financially and emotionally. Laura was just his latest mark, though she thought she was his partner. "The really sick part," Jenna explained, "is that he gets off on the destruction. The money's nice, but what he really loves is watching marriages explode. And Laura's helping him. Laura thinks she's in love. Alex thinks she's a useful idiot with good connections and a gullible husband." Jenna's laugh was bitter. They deserve each other. I left the Red Lantern with my head spinning and my phone full of screenshots. But as I drove home, I realized I had one more stop to make. Sarah answered her door in pajamas and a robe, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Mark? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Can I come in? We need to talk." Her apartment was small but neat, the kind of place that felt like a home instead of a showcase. She made coffee while I told her about my meeting with Jenna, about Alex's pattern of destroying marriages, about Laura's plan to have me fired and discredited. "Jesus," Sarah breathed. "I knew Laura could be selfish, but this is sociopathic," I finished, "and I need your help to stop it." Sarah was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee cup like it might hold answers. When she finally looked up, her expression was determined. "What do you need me to do?" "Help me give them exactly what they deserve." The plan we hatched over the next hour was beautiful in its simplicity. Laura was hosting an open house that weekend for one of her biggest clients, a mansion in the hills that represented a six-figure commission. It would be packed with potential buyers, real estate agents, and local media. The perfect stage for a very public humiliation. Sarah's job was to get Laura talking, to record her bragging about her plans for me. My job was to prepare a little multimedia presentation that would give the open house guests something to really talk about. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked as I prepared to leave. Once we do this, there's no going back. Laura made that choice when she decided to destroy my life, I replied. I'm just returning the favor. The next few days were a blur of preparation. I compiled every piece of evidence I had, the text messages, the credit card receipts, the photos from their secret getaways. But I was careful to keep everything legal, everything above board. No stolen documents, no illegal recordings, just the truth presented in all its ugly glory. Friday night, Sarah called with the audio she'd recorded. Laura's voice, clear as a bell. Mark's going to be so easy to destroy. He's weak, always has been. Once Alex files the harassment complaint and I get the restraining order, we can take the house and everything else. What about his feelings? Sarah had asked. Laura's laugh was cold as winter rain. What about them? He should have paid more attention to his wife instead of his precious real estate deals. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for an open house. I arrived early before the crowds and had a friendly chat with the AV technician setting up the presentation system. $100 tip bought me 5 minutes alone with the equipment. By the time Laura arrived, everything was ready. She looked stunning, dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. She worked the crowd like a politician, charming potential buyers and schmoozing with other agents. Alex lurked in the background, playing the supportive boyfriend to perfection. At exactly 2 p.m., Laura called for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming to this beautiful property. Before we begin our tour, I'd like to share a brief presentation about the home's unique features. She pressed the remote, and the wall-mounted screen came to life. But instead of architectural details and neighborhood amenities, the guests were treated to a slideshow titled, The Real Laura, A Study in Deception. The first slide was a text message from Alex. Can't wait to get you alone tonight. Your husband has no idea what he's missing. Laura's face went white. She frantically pressed buttons on the remote, but nothing happened. The presentation continued, each slide more damaging than the last. Photos from their secret weekend trips, credit card receipts from expensive dinners, voice recordings of Laura mocking me to her friends. The crowd was transfixed. Phones came out, recording everything. Laura's boss, a distinguished man in his 60s, looked like he was watching a car crash in slow motion. "Turn it off!" Laura screamed. But the presentation had a life of its own now. The final slide was the audio Sarah had recorded, Laura's voice echoing through the mansion's sound system. Mark's going to be so easy to destroy. He's weak, always has been. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Laura's boss stepped forward, his face grim. "Laura, you're fired, effective immediately." That's when Alex made his move, charging toward me like an angry bull. But rage makes people stupid, and Alex was already pretty stupid to begin with. I sidestepped at the last second, and he went crashing into the dessert table, sending cake and pastries flying everywhere. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Phones captured every moment of Alex's humiliation, his designer clothes covered in frosting, and his dignity in ruins. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, "I think this concludes today's presentation. Thank you all for coming." As the guests filed out, chattering excitedly about what they'd witnessed, Laura grabbed my arm. "You bastard," she hissed. "You think you've won? This isn't over." I looked down at her perfectly manicured fingers digging into my sleeve, then up at her face, twisted with rage and humiliation. "You're right, Laura. It's not over." I gently removed her hand from my arm. But it's about to be. The video went viral within hours. Real estate agent's cheating wife exposed at open house racked up 500,000 views before dinner time. The local news picked it up, then the regional stations, then the internet comedy, shows that specialized in schadenfreude and public humiliation. Laura became a meme overnight. Weak husband Laura spawned dozens of variations, each more brutal than the last. Her perfectly curated social media presence collapsed under an avalanche of comments, shares, and reactions from people who loved watching the mighty fall. But I wasn't done yet. Alex's steroid use had been an open secret at Elite Fitness for months. A few strategically placed calls to the State Athletic Commission, along with some photos Jenna had provided, resulted in an investigation that shut down his personal training license. The gym, desperate to avoid association with the scandal, terminated his contract and banned him from the premises. Ellen, Laura's loyal friend and enabler, proved to have the loyalty of a wet paper towel when the social winds shifted. She sold an exclusive interview to the local tabloid blogger, revealing years of Laura's private confessions about her marriage, her affairs, and her plans to trade up to a better husband. "I always knew something was wrong," Ellen told the blogger, her crocodile tears practically audible through the text. "Laura was always complaining about Mark, always looking for something better. I tried to be a good friend, but I couldn't support what she was doing." The interview ran with the headline, "Best Friend Reveals, I Tried to Stop Her Cheating Ways." It included photos from Laura's social media, quotes from their private conversations, and a detailed timeline of the affair that made Laura look like a calculating predator and Alex like her willing accomplice. Detective Heller made one last attempt to intimidate me, showing up at my real estate office with his badge and his attitude. But public opinion had shifted decisively in my favor, and even the police department wanted nothing to do with Laura's mess. "You need to back off, Mark," Heller warned, trying to loom over my desk in a way that might have been intimidating if I still cared about Laura's opinion of anything. "Back off from what, detective? Telling the truth? Defending myself against false accusations?" I leaned back in my chair, completely relaxed. "You can't arrest a man for exposing his wife's affair, especially when she was planning to destroy his life. She says you're harassing her. She's free to say whatever she wants. It's a free country." I smiled. "Of course, if she files a false police report, that's a crime. And I have plenty of evidence to prove her accusations are lies." Heller left without another word, his tail between his legs like a scolded dog. The coup de grace came when Laura, desperate and friendless, decided to take our dog as some kind of twisted revenge. Rex was a golden retriever we'd adopted 3 years ago, and Laura had never shown much interest in him beyond using him as a prop for social media photos. Sarah and I were having dinner at my house when we heard the commotion outside. Through the window, we could see Laura trying to coax Rex into her car while he resisted, confused and frightened by her frantic energy. "Call the police," I told Sarah, but she was already dialing. I went outside, moving slowly and calmly. "Laura, what are you doing?" "Taking what's mine," she snapped, tugging on Rex's collar. "The divorce papers say I get half of everything, and that includes the dog." "The divorce papers say you get half of the marital assets," I corrected. "Rex isn't an asset. He's a living creature, and he's clearly distressed." By now, neighbors had come out to watch the spectacle. Mrs. Henderson from next door was recording everything on her phone. The Johnsons across the street stood on their porch, shaking their heads in disgust. "He's my dog, too!" Laura screamed, her composure finally cracking completely. "I'm not leaving with nothing." That's when Rex made the decision for all of us. He broke free from Laura's grip and ran straight to me, pressing against my legs like he was seeking protection. "I think he's made his choice," I said gently. Laura lunged for the dog again, but I stepped between them. She shoved me hard, and I stumbled backward. The neighbors gasped. Mrs. Henderson's phone captured every moment. "That's assault," I said, pulling out my own phone to call 911. "And it's all on video." The police arrived within minutes. Not Heller, thankfully, but 2 uniforms who took statements and reviewed the video evidence. Laura tried to claim I was keeping her from her property, but the neighbor's testimony painted a clear picture of who the aggressor was. She left in tears, alone, her perfect life reduced to a studio apartment downtown, and a reputation that would follow her for years. Alex, facing his own legal troubles and banned from his primary source of income, had already moved on to his next mark. But the story wasn't over yet. The restraining order Laura filed against me was thrown out of court faster than a bad pitch in the World Series. Her lawyer, a slick downtown type who charged more per hour than most people made in a week, couldn't overcome the mountain of evidence that proved Laura had been the architect of her own destruction. "Your Honor," he argued desperately, "my client has been the victim of a coordinated harassment campaign designed to destroy her reputation and livelihood." The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, wasn't buying it. "Counselor, from what I can see, your client was caught in an extramarital affair and faced the natural consequences of her actions. The defendant has broken no laws and violated no court orders." She looked directly at Laura, who sat in the gallery looking like a ghost of her former self. "Mrs. Patterson, you cannot use this court to shield yourself from the social consequences of adultery. Your reputation was damaged by your own choices, not by your husband's response to them." Case dismissed. Laura's attempt to paint herself as the victim had backfired spectacularly, generating even more negative publicity and cementing her status as the villain in our very public drama. But Laura and Alex weren't done fighting. Desperate people do desperate things, and they were about as desperate as it gets. The break-in happened on a Thursday night during a thunderstorm that knocked out power to half the city. Sarah and I were watching a movie when the security system's backup battery kicked in, flooding the house with alarms and flashing lights. "Stay here," I told Sarah, grabbing the baseball bat I kept by the door. "Like hell," she replied, picking up the heavy flashlight from the kitchen counter. We found them in my home office, Laura rifling through my desk while Alex stood guard by the window. They looked like a pair of amateur burglars, soaked from the rain and jumpy as cats in a dog kennel. "Looking for something?" I asked, flipping on the lights. Laura spun around, clutching a handful of documents. "These are my financial records too. I have a right to them." "You have a right to copies, which your lawyer already has," I replied calmly. "You don't have a right to break into my house to steal the originals." Alex stepped forward, trying to look threatening despite the fact that his designer clothes were dripping puddles on my hardwood floor. "We're not stealing anything, Mark. We're just taking what belongs to Laura." "What belongs to Laura is whatever the divorce decree says belongs to Laura. Everything else is theft." That's when I noticed the gasoline can by the door and the lighter in Alex's hand. "Jesus Christ," Sarah breathed. "You were going to burn the house down." "Just the office," Laura said, as if that made it better. "Just the financial records and the computer files, to level the playing field." "To commit arson," I corrected. "To destroy evidence in a legal proceeding. To potentially eliminate someone if the fire spread." The magnitude of what they'd planned hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. They'd been willing to risk murder to cover their tracks. "You're both insane," Sarah said, backing toward the door. "Completely, criminally insane." That's when the cavalry arrived. Ross, my old college buddy, had been checking on the house during the storm and seen the broken window. He'd brought backup, 3 of my neighbors, all armed with flashlights and righteous indignation. "Police are on the way," Ross announced, water streaming from his rain jacket. "Along with the fire department, since someone reported seeing suspicious activity around a gas can." Laura and Alex were trapped, caught red-handed with evidence of attempted arson. The gasoline, the lighter, the broken window, the stolen documents. It was a prosecutor's dream case. "This is all your fault," Laura screamed at me as the police led her away in handcuffs. "You destroyed my life. You turned everyone against me." "I didn't destroy your life, Laura," I replied sadly. "You did that all by yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it." Alex went quietly, his fight finally beaten out of him by the reality of facing serious criminal charges. Attempted arson carried a minimum 5-year sentence in our state, and breaking and entering with intent to commit a felony would add another 3 to 5. The local news crews arrived as the police cars were pulling away, their cameras capturing the final act of Laura's fall from suburban queen to criminal defendant. The story led the morning news. Cheating wife arrested for attempted arson of estranged husband's home. But the real ending came 3 weeks later, when the divorce was finalized. Laura had fired her expensive lawyer after the arson arrest, unable to afford his fees from jail. Her public defender negotiated a plea deal that gave her 2 years in minimum security prison in exchange for a guilty plea to attempted arson and burglary. The divorce settlement was everything I could have hoped for and more. Laura's criminal conviction voided any claim she might have had to spousal support, and her attempt to destroy my property eliminated her right to half the house. I kept everything: the house, the car, the dog, and most importantly, my dignity. Alex got 3 years, to be served concurrently with Laura's sentence. The State Athletic Commission permanently revoked his training license, and Elite Fitness sued him for damages to their reputation. He'd never work in the fitness industry again. Ellen, ever the opportunist, parlayed her insider knowledge of the scandal into a book deal. My Best Friend the Sociopath: How I Survived Laura Patterson's Web of Lies became a minor bestseller in the true crime category. Detective Heller was quietly transferred to a desk job after an internal investigation revealed he'd been feeding information to Laura throughout the divorce proceedings. He took early retirement rather than face formal disciplinary action. Sarah and I? We took things slow, building a relationship based on honesty instead of deception, trust instead of betrayal. She moved in 6 months after the divorce was final, and Rex approved wholeheartedly. The house felt like home again, filled with laughter instead of lies, warmth instead of cold calculation. We hosted dinner parties where the guests actually liked each other, where the conversation was genuine instead of performative. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about Laura in her prison cell and wonder if she understood what she'd lost. Not just the house or the money or the social status, but the chance at real happiness with someone who'd loved her despite her flaws. But then, I'd look at Sarah, curled up beside me with Rex at the foot of the bed, and I'd realize that Laura's loss had been my gain. Her betrayal had freed me from a marriage built on lies and introduced me to someone who valued honesty above all else. The last I heard, Laura was working in the prison laundry and taking anger management classes. Alex was in a different facility, learning automotive repair and reportedly finding religion. Whether either of them had learned anything from their spectacular fall remained to be seen. As for me, I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting everything you deserve while your enemies get exactly what they've earned. Some people write their own endings. I just provided the footnotes.